It kind of slowed down when I bought, let's see, this was about 2014. The car was in a good spot and pretty track worthy, and I was starting to get a little bit better, learning more. And at that point I bought a house, and right around the same time I was buying a house, I took this to the track and blew the motor.
Oh, nice.
And so when the motor blew and I was also buying the house, all my time went to the house, time and money. It was a little bit of a fixer-upper, and at that point this thing just sat basically.
Right. All right, everyone, welcome back to Automotive Anatomy. Today we have Colin. Colin, thank you so much for making the time for us, man.
Of course.
So tell us, man, what do you drive?
It's a 92 Integra GSR.
92 GSR.
Yeah.
So tell us, when did you pick it up, and why the D8?
Well, I actually first bought a 91 GS when I was in high school. That was probably like 98 or 99. And I had that until I got this car, which I got from a friend as a shell, which I think that was about 2007.
Oh, wow.
So my 91 that I had before actually looked like this car. I had turned it into basically a GSR clone. So it had a GSR motor in it, GSR interior, the painted moldings. Like I said, it was a clone except for just a couple of pieces. And then my buddy was parting out a GSR, and I thought this is the opportunity to get the actual GSR. So I bought it as a shell, and threw all my interior, my motor, just all the parts I had accumulated at that point, I put onto this chassis.
How did you come across this car? I mean the platform.
Honestly, randomly. I mean, I was high school kid looking for not my first car, I guess it was my second car, but I was starting to realize I wanted something fun to drive, something kind of sporty, and something that I could modify a little bit. I grew up with cars being a passion because my dad was into cars. When I was younger, he was at the racetrack racing, I think it was RX-3s and RX-7s.
Oh, so he was into the import as well.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
awesome. Okay.
So I started to get that bug when, when I was of age to have a car. And so for whatever reason, I just started looking at these. I think there was a couple in town, and I always thought, that's a really cool looking car. I like that. And so I was looking specifically at these, and then also the Corolla GTS of that same era, like the early 90s. So just kind of by luck, I ended up with one of these instead of one of those. And I've had a few of them, I think actually a total of 5 over the years.
What?
Since then. But yeah, I've had at least one of these for basically 20 years now.
That's insane. So obviously you say you had a car, swapped everything out, so you already had some type of vision. What is the latest vision that you have for this build? Because it looks pretty much complete in my eyes. So I don't know, what's your next goal? What's the next phase? I mean,
it's been through a lot. The more recent phase has been long and drawn out. Basically from when I got the car. When I got like this chassis from my friend, I was really starting to get into wanting to go out to the racetrack, to do just HPD events. And at that time, I was basically living here in Long Beach, working and trying to throw together kind of a ragtag car at the time. These weren't worth as much back then, and it wasn't in fantastic condition. And so I basically just started like ripping stuff off, selling parts, weight reduction, all that kind of stuff. And really just started getting out there and going to the track as much as I had time for, and as much as I could pay for, It kind of slowed down when I bought, let's see, this was about 2014. The car was in a good spot and pretty track worthy. And I was starting to get a little bit better, learning more. And at that point I bought a house, and right around the same time I was buying a house, I took this to the track and blew the motor.
Oh, nice. And
so when the motor blew and I was also buying the house, all my time went to the house, time and money. It was a little bit of a fixer-upper, and at that point this thing just sat basically. Right. So since then, it's gone through getting a new heart, you know, a new transplant, and then also I got the entire car painted.
Inside and out.
Just exterior.
Oh, okay.
When I did the engine bay, or when I did the engine swap, since I had the engine out, I had them. I fixed part of the core support, which was bent, and then had the engine bay resprayed. And then it was, actually, I guess I did the engine swap a little bit before I moved. That was when I was still here in Long Beach. And then right when I moved, right around that period of time, I got into a little parking lot fender bender and messed up the quarter panel in the back. Smashed the tail light. Some guy just backed into me. And at that point, like, it just sat. It was not a priority at all. You know, I was focused on working on the house and work and just other stuff. So it sat for a long time, and over a process of a few years, I finally got it like stripped and off to paint, because there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to do when I did that. Like, you'll notice the car doesn't have a sunroof, but the GSRs did. So, you know, part of getting that repair done, I didn't want to just do the repair. I wanted to do all the exterior stuff that I had planned, right? So I cut out the old roof, put in a new roof. The guys fixed the damage in the back. I had various body parts, like this is a carbon hood, so I had that painted. I have a carbon hatch for it. I had that painted. The wing I had painted. So I had all these parts that, you know, would have been kind of mixed-matched if I had just thrown them on the car. And since I was in the accident, it was just a good opportunity to, like, let's just paint the whole car. Let's just finally do it all now. Wow. So that's basically where it is right now. So it's, you know, for I don't know, 5 years, maybe close to 7 years, it's basically been in some kind of state of being built back up. So I haven't really had the opportunity to be tracking it yet. This motor I've only taken to the track once. And then since it's been painted, I've just done a handful of autocrosses. And there's a few bugs that need to be worked out, namely the front suspension. There's a little gremlin that I haven't quite figured out. And then at that point, it should be ready just to take back to the track whenever I have some time. So
that's awesome, man.
It's kind of taken a long time to get back to getting on the track, a lot longer than I would have liked. But it's pretty close now, which I'm excited about.
And it looks amazing. So
Thank you.
You're doing it right. Cool, man.
It's probably the best it's ever gonna look.
Is that right?
Because as soon as I start tracking it, it's gonna start getting, you know, some bumps and bruises and that kind of stuff. So I gotta enjoy it while it lasts and try not to be, you know, too hurt when it gets dinged up and stuff.
Alrighty, Colin. So tell us a little bit about the front end. What do we got going on?
It's pretty stock, really. I have the Japanese one-piece headlights. The hood is color matched, but it's carbon. It's a stock bumper lights. Has a aftermarket lip on it. It's basically just a plastic eBay special, which I picked because if I go off track, it's going to bend and it's easy to replace rather than an expensive carbon one. So that's pretty much the front end. In general, the car is very stock, with the exception of certain components that are either kind of the thing you do to this car, like the thin moldings, the one-piece headlights, you know, and other than that, just a couple of kind of aftermarket mods. But in general, it's relatively OEM, and that was kind of the goal from the get-go for the whole car, was to use as much factory stuff as I can, because it, you know, A, I had a lot of it, and B, it just the fit and finish is a lot better. You figure they've already done the engineering, so if there's not a reason to change it, I didn't, for the most part, didn't really change it.
Gotcha. Tell us about your suspension pieces.
Suspension is Coney race shocks with ground control coilovers. All new bushings throughout, primarily hard race rubber bushings, PCI spherical trailing arm bushings, and then Vision upper control arms, carbing strut bars. What else is under there? Innovative front traction bar, Eibach Type R rear sway bar with a ASR brace, and the front sway bar is Suspension Techniques. And then there's a couple, you know, alignment bits and pieces here and there, but nothing else too fancy.
Cool. Tell us about your wheel and tire setup, man. Absolutely, you know, this white with this matte blue, just it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, they're, you know, kind of the ubiquitous TE37. These are the super laps. They're 15 by 8 plus plus 25, which I'd actually like to swap them out for 35 offset. I think they'd fit a little bit better. But when I bought these, they weren't making that offset yet. And then some 225 Nankang tires. I used to have an optional 9091 lip in the back, but I got rid of it. It's kind of more of a showpiece than anything else. It wasn't doing anything for this car, I'd say. And then other than that, yeah, it's just factory bumper, shaved the emblem holes, and then it's got a replica Hero wing.
Wow, very nice, extremely nice. Tell us about your exhaust system.
It's an RSR exhaust. With us, you know, the guys that are into this second generation Integra, that's always been the kind of sought after one. And this one in particular, actually, I've had for probably almost 15 years now. Woo. And I got that from a very good friend of mine who I met through these cars. There's a whole group of us that are still friends now that we met via G2IC back in the late 90s and early 2000s, you know, and just have some really good buddies from that era now. And so I bought that exhaust from him, which he had for, I don't know, 5+ years before that. So that's one of those parts that's just kind of been in the family, so to say. For the most part, interior's just gutted in the back, and then basically factory in the front, with the exception of the seats and a couple of gauges, steering wheel, but really it's just, you know, factory interior in the front. And that's really what I was going for originally when I was putting the car together, is, you know, taking more off of it rather than just adding a bunch of stuff, you know, and relying on just the kind of OEM wherever I could. So yeah, just stripped a bunch of stuff for weight reduction, like I said earlier, when I was really just getting into kind of just stripping it down, trying to get it as light as possible. And then seats are Cobra, harnesses are G-Force, PCI, seat brackets, Fastline shifter, K20 Mart shift knob.
What kind of roll bar?
Auto power, just their standard 4-point.
Very nice. What are the future plans for the interior?
I just did this, redid the seat setup. I got these new PCI mounts. Previously I only had the driver's side and it was a non-sliding mount. So I went sliding mounts both sides, and then upgraded the passenger seat. Mm-hmm. So really the interior is where I want it to be.
Whoa. So this is your track car?
I have
Can you imagine a show car? Wow.
I have a little bit of OCD when it comes to stuff, so I'm always like cleaning, and I really lucked out that I happened to be redoing my engine bay, or like I mentioned before, when I did the motor, I had the front core support fixed, and since I was going to have them, you know, body shop do that, and the motor was already out, it was just a no-brainer to spray the engine bay, you know. So I kind of lucked out with that. I was never really part of the plan, but it kind of just fell into my lap. And likewise, when I was building this motor, a friend of mine happened to be putting his car together at the same time, and so we collaborated on a lot of stuff. Like, you'll notice a lot of the hardware has been re-zinced, and
I love, that's exactly what I'm paying attention
yeah.
to. Yeah, you notice, and I'm like,
and that
that's
was,
what
you know,
me out.
My buddy was doing his bay, and so we basically just pooled all of our hardware together and did it all at the same time. So that was another one of those things that, you know, if I would have done it solo or tried to chip away at it when the engine was in there, you know, it wouldn't have been something I would have bothered doing.
Oh, okay.
But it was like, the engine's out, all the bolts are apart anyway, my buddy's already taken his stuff there. You know, we were going to save money on that, so it was like, why not do it to have such a better result when it's all done? And I'm super happy that I did that at the time, because now, you know, looking back on it, it really helps finish it off well. So like I said before, this is the best it's gonna look. Because once it starts getting like used and worked on more, you know, it's gonna lose a little bit of that polish that it has now.
Right.
But that's fine. That's something that we'll deal with down the road.
Elegant character. So tell us, man, what are we staring at?
It's a Type R motor, B18C, basically just factory. It was rebuilt, but to factory spec. So there's nothing, you know, no aftermarket cams or anything like that on the inside. It's all factory internals. I had most of the parts in here I had on my old motor, which was a B17 that was basically built with the same specs as a Type R, same compression, had Type R cams in it. So when I got this long block, I really just swapped over like the manifold and the cams and all that into this motor. So it's basically just a stock but rebuilt Type R motor. Transmission is a Type R transmission that is in the original transmission for the car, which is the cable transmission, so that was just swapped in. But again, just factory Type R, you know, factory Type R gearing, factory Type R limited slip differential.
That is awesome. So then tell us a little bit more about the radiator, any other component, fuels.
I mean, you know, a lot of it's not anything too fancy. It's a fluidine radiator that I've had for forever. Fuel, I mean, I have there's a fuel rail on there, but it's really not needed. It's something I just had around and polished it up, and it looks nicer than the factory one. But honestly, it's not, I don't need that for, you know, basically a stock motor. It's got a Type R intake on it, smaller battery, and relocated down a little bit. Since this was a GSR, it, you know, originally had ABS, AC, power steering, all that is gone now, which I have to admit, I wish I had the AC and the power steering back. The ABS I can do without. But
which makes me wonder, you want a GSR, but let me take away the sunroof, let me take away ABS, let me take away power steering. It's like,
yeah, awesome. You know, it was, again, like when we were younger, that was the thing we were all doing, is just taking all that stuff out. And then you get older and realize, well, 30 pounds isn't that much if I'm not just drenching in sweat, you know, driving up to Buttonwillow. Because that's really, you know, it gets driven to the track, and that was always the plan. You know, I don't have the ability to store a trailer somewhere and tow it. So it gets driven there, and it's hot. It's hot getting up to the tracks in SoCal.
Yeah. What are the future plans for it?
Pretty much, I just want to work out those bugs with the front end. There's a little bit of a vibration I need to source, and a little bit of a clunk that I haven't been able to figure out. I really just need to put a concerted effort into it and sit down and focus on it. But honestly, at this point, it sits around and kind of gets driven to little, you know, events and stuff here and there, hang out with friends. But I haven't really had the time to, you know, stick to it over a extended period of time to source out whatever that issue is. But once that's sorted, it should just be ready to get on the track. At this point, you know, I don't want to keep tweaking things and messing with things. I want to just get back out there. That's what's more important, and that's why it's kind of been frustrating with just, you know, all like the engine needing to get redone because I blew it, and then the car getting run into, and then that turning into a big paint project. You know, that it was never supposed to be that big project. You know. But I kept just kind of digging myself deeper, I think, which is just kind of my personality. I really enjoy the result, but it also means that I haven't, you know, gotten it out there since then. So that's the next step. Not putting more stuff on it, you know, getting it sorted and safe to take out on the track, and then, you know, then go from there. You know, in this form, because I have changed some stuff since I have tracked it last. So at that point, then see how it is, and if there's anything else that needs to be messed with, then I'll mess with it then. But right now, just get it out there.
It feels light. It feels super light. It feels like this engine is more than enough for this car.
Yeah, definitely. I had, you know, the B17 previously, which was great. You know, it was faster than the stock one because I had it built like a Type R. And that was plenty of power then. And then it just, you know, I could basically built this motor for the same price that I could build any size B-Series motor. You know, it's rebuilding it, so all the costs are essentially the same. So I just went with the Type R, and like it's way more than I need. You know, like at this point, the car is definitely faster than I am as a driver.
That's awesome.
So it's going to take a little bit more getting used to.
And now we're in a racetrack. All right, Colin, man, talk about a little gem, time capsule in a way-ish. It's very, you know, late 80s, early 90s car. Like I mentioned to you, we don't find this perfection of a car anymore. And so I do appreciate you still holding it down for this chassis and the style that you're going with. So tell us, man, any future plans you forgot about and any shout outs?
I mean, the plan still is just get back out there on the track at some point. I've spent too much time building and not enough driving, so that's what's next. And you know, really, I owe a lot of the car to just the friends that I've made over the past couple of decades. You know, a big group of us met based on this chassis from an internet forum. You know, that was back in the day when it was kind of weird to meet people on the internet. You tell someone you met someone on the internet and they kind of look at you like, well, that's weird. A little more normal these days, but just the friendships that we've built over the decades, and just helped each other, guys helping me with my car, all of them, they know who they are, all the SoCal IC guys, and you know, likewise. So definitely owe this to them to a certain extent.
Alrighty, anybody else?
Oh yeah, my buddy Nino, the guy who I got this this shell from. So yeah, wouldn't have happened without him for sure. Yeah.
Well, Colin, thank you so much, man, for making the time for us. I really appreciate it. This car is it's perfect. It's perfect, and I can't wait to see. I kind of don't want to see it at the track because, like you mentioned, it's gonna get a little scuffed up. But at the same time, I do want to see it at the track just because that's what it's built for.
Yeah.
And the heart of it that, you know, powers this car, it just screams track heritage. So, you know, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for the time, and I can't wait to see you in the future events.
Awesome, thank you. I think there's still just a deep attachment with these cars and this chassis for me. And even though this one's, you know, technically not the same car that I originally thought, to me it feels like it's the same car.
Interesting.
Because it looked exactly the same. All the, like, these door panels are actually the door panels from my original 91.
Oh, no way.
The dash is the original dash from my 91. So, you know, it never really felt like a different car. It was the same exact color, had all the same parts on it. Yeah, just it feels like I basically had the same car this whole time. That's awesome. So sometimes I forget about that and I have to remind myself, oh yeah, this is a completely different chassis. And at this point, there's really not that much that's left original. You know, probably like.
Which ironically, that's the reason why you picked a different shell, but.